Good morning, everybody. This is Gene from NYC, and I'm back with another video. This is going to be a happy and much more positive video, mainly because I'm in a fairly good mood, and as I was saying, I'm in a fairly good mood, and I don't feel like complaining today. And I've been wanting to start putting more positive content on the channel. While I will certainly take video games and bad comics and bad games to task, I also want to give love and praise to what was good about video games and what I would like to see return. Plus, I just feel like fangirling over one of my favorite video games, and what's the point of having a channel if I can't do what I want? So, today's video game is Tactical Espionage Action, Metal Gear Solid. This is one of my favorite games of all time. I honestly believe that as a video game, it's one of the best games ever made, and just as art in the video game medium or genre, it's one of the best just ever made. I mean, hands down, regardless of genre or theme, it's just one of the best games and one of the best pieces of art ever made. This game stands out to me for many reasons. One, because it was probably one of the first action games that I really played and enjoyed. I was never a big fan of games like Legend of Zelda or Castlevania, things of that nature, and or Contra. And this was probably the first game. Granted, it's not it's not like Zelda or those type of games, but it has its history, right? If you're familiar with Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2, they started out as similar games, and this was the first game. This was the first like real action game that I ever played that sort of has that history that I ever really enjoyed. I mean, when I was a kid, you could not get me away from this game. My brother and I played it to death. And it's also one of the few games that I think my brother and I truly enjoyed together, right? Usually our gaming tastes, then and now, were very different. I liked the more violent stuff, the more gritty stuff. He preferred stuff that was a bit lighter hearted, although he played a lot of the same stuff I played because we were kids and whatever we had was whatever we had. But so we ended up playing or watching each other play the same video games, but playing something and enjoying it are two different things. And this was one of the few games that I think he and I really enjoyed. Although I continued with the series, I think he pretty much dipped out after Metal Gear Solid 3. And I don't think I've played a Metal Gear Solid game after 3 either, but I kept up with the series, just researching it and following it and whatnot. I dipped out because it just got too convoluted for me, which is, of course, if you're familiar with Kojima's work, you understand going in that it's gonna be convoluted, but it just reached the level of being convoluted that I couldn't follow anymore. And honestly, it's like, yeah, I have no interest in Peace Walker. I don't care about all the midquel stuff. Plus, I prefer playing as Solid Snake as opposed to Naked Snake / Big Boss. But anyway, this is not about the series as a whole. This is about Metal Gear Solid. So let me get back to Metal Gear Solid. One of the things that really stuck out to me as a kid, and even now, was just how much content this video game had. I mean, despite the fact that it's only 2 discs. You see here we have disc 1. Come on, turn around. So we have disc 1. Where is it right there? Disc 1. And we have, come on, don't break. And we have disc 2, right? On 2 discs, there was so much content. There was the game itself. There was the VR training mode. There was all this supplemental material in the game to sort of get you caught up on the story and the history of the Metal Gear franchise. There was the cutscene viewer. Just so much to do, and then all the hidden items in the game itself, whether it be the camouflage or the bandana, or just so much content. Just so much content. And especially when I think about how video games work today with how everything or almost everything has to be downloaded, or it's given to you piecemeal, or transactions and all that. There was so much content stuffed into two discs, and at least to me, what that content did was just flesh out the main game that much more. The VR training mode made you better at shooting and sneaking around and all that stuff. I really feel that this game was a labor of love by Kojima-san and the team that he had with him working on it at the time, and even Konami at the time. And what's interesting is that I remember reading in a GamePro magazine article years ago when the game came out, and they gave their review. If I remember correctly, Kojima said that the main game as a whole was only like 20% of what he truly wanted in the game and what he envisioned. So as just jam-packed as the game is, that was only 20%. What actually got in the game was just 20% of Kojima's vision. That is amazing to me. Just how creative he is, that this masterpiece of a video game is only 20% of what he envisioned it to be. Another thing is that it's one of the first video games that I ever played, and this would also go with Final Fantasy VII, that was truly cinematic in quality and in nature, right? And it to me, Metal Gear Solid is a playable 1990s action spy thriller movie. And that was what really hit me when I played it, and even now, as someone who can look at it from a more artistic point of view. I had never encountered a video game at that point that was like that. I played video games that had stories and cutscenes. For example, Street Fighter, if you play on a high enough level, you'll get the animated cutscenes. So it was so it wasn't that I had never seen cutscenes or any sort of visual narrative or things like that before. But none of the games that I had played previously, with the exception perhaps of Final Fantasy VII, had ever come across as a playable movie. I always knew that in the end they were video games, right? Maybe they had some cutscenes to, spice things up, spruce up the story a little bit. But in the end, they were always video games. This and Final Fantasy VII to me were the first games that I ever encountered that really blurred the line between a video game and a playable movie. And to me, when it comes to that seamless or seemingly seamless merger of film quality, cinematic quality, and gameplay elements, and honestly creating a playable movie. To me, the best examples of that will always be Metal Gear Solid and will be Final Fantasy VII. So everything, I mean the colors, the graphics. Of course, I will admit that the graphics have not aged well, as video games have improved, and especially, like, how do I put it? I remember playing Metal Gear Solid on the PS2 because the PS2 was backwards compatible, right? And the PS2 was like 128-bit graphics, and the PlayStation was 32-bit. So there was this huge jump graphically, right, in graphical capability. And when I played Metal Gear Solid on the PS2, right? It was like I really noticed just how blocky and square everything was. And of course, you notice things like how Snake doesn't really have a face in the first game. Like, his eyes, his lips are just like little black smudges in the right areas to give you an approximation of a face. But I think for its time and for its day, the graphics were very strong. Granted, did not age well. I admit that. But for the time, the graphics were very good. But where this game, again, its strength was always in its cinematic quality, which of course makes sense given that Hideo Kojima-san had wanted to be a filmmaker, a film director at one point, and you can definitely see the film influence in the game. So, yeah, it's just a cinematic masterpiece, in my opinion. I think it's one of those things where it's like, even if you don't have an interest in video games, but you have an interest in film art, or if you want to be a movie maker, I do think that this is something that should be studied. It is that good. You don't have to be a gamer to appreciate art, because this game is art. The music is art. The graphics are art. The visual aesthetic, the writing, the voice acting, it's all art. And the beautiful thing about art is that even if it's not in your preferred medium, you can still learn from it. You don't have to be a gamer or a video game designer to learn about cinematic quality, right? And vice versa. So I sincerely think that this and Final Fantasy VII should be examined in film schools. But that's just me. Now let me get to the video game portion of it, right? Because I've been going on for nearly 12 minutes now about how artistic it is and how film-like it is, but let's get to the meat and potatoes of it. For all of its film-like qualities, it's still a video game. And what I liked about it as a video game was, first of all, was the fact that the controls, for the most part, were very intuitive. You really didn't have to work hard to learn them. Plus, there was the VR mode, which for me was a godsend, because how do I put it? Metal Gear Solid to me is like basketball, in the sense that I love it as something to play, but dear God, am I horrible at it. Like in basketball, I can't shoot to save my life. I'm a natural power forward. I can't shoot for nothing. And when it comes to games like Metal Gear Solid and similar games such as what is it called? Siphon Filter or Silent Hill, I'm not good at that sneaking around, type of thing. Believe me, I died. I don't know how many times I died in this Metal Gear game, and in Metal Gear 2, and in Metal Gear 3. Right? I'm just not good at the gameplay part, but the VR mode made me a little bit better. And I just love the game so much, and the challenge that I kept trying. So there was that, but the gameplay was very intuitive. I love how the gameplay made you think outside the box, right? Really made you think about what you were going to do, because the video games I was accustomed to playing, Streets of Rage, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, everything is why is this tilted? Everything is face to face, right? In Metal Gear Solid, you actually have to focus more on sneaking around, on not being seen, on avoiding confrontation. So for me, that was a really interesting challenge back then, because it was so different from the other video games that I had played, where it was understood, okay, you move forward into the danger, you fight your opponent face to face and hand to hand. Metal Gear Solid is, no, wait for him to pass the wall and you're out of his vision, then turn around and snipe him with the SOCOM from behind. So for me, that was something I really had to get used to, reading enemy patterns and all that stuff. So there was all that. But the gameplay was very intuitive. I picked up on it quickly. I was very glad for the mission control, because you could call them and get tips about, what to do against certain boss characters. Speaking of which, the voice acting in this game is amazing. David Hayter as Snake, Cam Clark as Liquid, but Jennifer Hale. Believe it or not, Jennifer Hale is, she voices the Dr. Naomi Hunter, which I had no idea. Like, I legit thought somebody was lying to me when they told me that. I was like, there's no way. It doesn't sound like her. I had no idea that Jennifer Hale's range was so vast. I mean, as much as I don't want to make the comparison because I don't like him anymore, she really is like the female Chris Sabat in just the amazing range and different type of voices she can do. So there's that. And again, just the voice acting is just top notch. It's just top notch. I can't say there was not enough praise that I could ever give to it that could ever truly express, in my opinion, how great the voice acting is. And so back to the gameplay portion. So then there's the boss battles. What I really liked about the boss battles, what I liked and hated about the boss battles was that, like the rest of the game, you had to be creative. And you had to think outside the box. Like, I remember one of the toughest bosses that I struggled with was Psycho Mantis, right? Because he was always throwing stuff at you. I was terrible at dodging and all this other stuff. And then, he takes control of Meryl, and it's like, well, do I throw a what is it, a flashbang, or do I do this, do I do that, do I punch her? And then there was like the torture sequence. Oh my god, the torture sequence drove me nuts. I was terrible at it. I failed the torture sequence so many times. Like, the first ending that I ever got for the game was the bad ending where Meryl dies because I couldn't get past the torture sequence. It took me a lot of practice. I used to ask my brother all the time whenever I was playing it and got up to it. I would pass it off to him. Like, you do this. I can't do it. I just couldn't press it fast enough. It took me a long time to learn how to do that. And then there were other boss fights like, oh god, the Hind D helicopter. I hate that thing. Because again, I was just so terrible at the aiming, and you have to hide, and the dang thing is shooting at you. That was one of those boss fights where I just gave it over to my brother, and I was like, you do this! You do it! He always had a better command and understanding of these type of games than I ever did. And then there came a point where he got tired of me relying on him. And what happens? I had to learn how to do it on my own. But I eventually got there. Oh, and then, what was it? Oh god, the Vulcan Raven fight toward the end of the game. Oh god, having to plant all those mines and then make sure, that he runs into them. And then I have to try to dodge, not just Vulcan Raven's Gatling gun, which was crazy enough, right? Then I have to also dodge the mines I put down. Those boss fights will always stand out in my mind as so creative and enjoyable and frustrating. It was just so many things. It was like I would be frustrated to the point where I would want to throw the controller, but then I'd finally win and then I would jump for joy. And that's the type of feeling that I think video games should give you, right? That sense of a challenge where where you get beat, and instead of feeling down, you're like, oh no, I almost had it. I'm starting to figure it out. I'm gonna try again. And that's what I miss a lot in modern games. I do think that so many games are focused on being cinematic that they forget to be challenge simulators, which is what video games started out as, at least in my opinion. And again, it's melding those two that makes this such a wonderful game. And then you have boss fights like, oh god, facing off with Gray Fox the Cyber Ninja. Oh, that was that was a terror. Having to run around Otacon's office and dodge things and all this other crazy stuff. And what else? What else was there? Fighting Metal Gear Rex. Oh my god. Just so many memories. Fighting Sniper Wolf twice. If there was one boss fight in the game that taught me a life lesson, it was the battles against Sniper Wolf. Because think about the first one, right? Snake and Meryl are caught unawares. Snake has to backtrack to the beginning of the game. You have to go all the way back to like the first level pretty much just to get the sniper rifle. Then you have to go back to the sniper den, and guess what? Not only is Snake a poorer sniper than Sniper Wolf is, right? He can only lay on the floor. She can kneel and stand and lay on the floor. His hands shake, hers don't. But the way the Sniper Alley is designed is to give Sniper Wolf the advantage. You cannot shoot from the corner. You're not elevated. She's on an elevated surface. It is set up for you to lose. It is set up to give her the advantage. And yet you are tasked to win. That really taught me about confronting problems in life, especially when it seems like the situation is set up so that you'll fail. And what that taught me was that you can't let that deter you. If there's a task you have to complete, something you have to do, even if the situation looks hopeless, even if it looks like you've been set up to fail, face it anyway. Face it anyway, and face it with the intention that somehow, some way, you will win. You will figure a way out of it or around it. I have to admit, it's a lesson that I need to be reminded of fairly regularly in life. Let's just put it that way. And then you finally beat her, and it's this awesome yes moment, and then what happens? She appears out of nowhere with those soldiers, and you get captured. But and then there's the second sniper fight with her in the snow again. Things are to her advantage, but at least for the second one, you have the Nikita missiles, so that's good. Those make it a lot easier, believe me. Something else about Sniper Wolf was just that, and again, it's a testament to Kojima and his team, and just how moving the game is. I mean, Sniper Wolf taunts you, makes fun of you, doesn't play fair, and the game makes you hate her and fear her, and then she gives this dying speech, of course, which is all dramatic and movie-like. 1 minute she's talking about, I am Lungshot, you cannot save me, and then she gives this whole spiel about her life. But then when you realize that her life was she had so much potential, but her life was such a waste, and that in the end all she was looking for was just she was looking for a hero. She was looking for someone to set her free. Big Boss gave her a purpose, and then Big Boss's clone gave her the freedom she was looking for. It's one of those things where you hate her 1 minute, and then you feel sorry for her and for the senselessness of it all a minute later. Again, it's an amazing testament to the artistry of the game. And then there's the key cards and the weapons. And the funny thing is that the game is also like a low-key fetch quest. But you have to always go back to these different rooms once you get the different key cards and get other stuff. But at least for me, it didn't bother me. I looked at it more as kind of like an exploration. It's like, oh, I can finally get into the level 6 doors. What can I get here? Ooh, a gas mask. Ooh, body armor. Oh, could I use body armor? But again, there was just so much jam-packed into 2 discs. Just so much content. And to me, as much as I love Metal Gear 2 and Metal Gear 3, and as advanced as the games became, for me, Metal Gear Solid will always be of the Metal Gear Solid series, not of Metal Gear, because that's an entirely different time period and whatnot. But Solid on, to me, this will always be the best game. The title image here, right? It's just so sleek and clean and minimalist, and it's such a, how do I put it? I guess it's deceptive in a way, considering again all the content. You wouldn't think a game with a title like this would have content like this, right? This, I think, visually is much more Metal Gear Solid like, right? You have the tank fight, and you have Snake here, all these different clips. This is truly representative of the game, right? You are Snake, a government agent on a mission to regain control from a secret nuclear weapons base from terrorist hands. So this is just a masterpiece in my mind. This is one of the many games, well, not many, perhaps, but one of several games that came out in the 1990s that really just changed the landscape of gaming. I mean, this game introduced, the stealth spy thriller genre that other games like Siphon Filter and Splinter Cell, and even, what is it, Hitman, I think, borrowed from and emulated in many ways. So this is one of a kind. This is one of a kind, and I am so glad that I was able to experience it, and I can still experience it whenever I want to. So that's it. That is my fangirling over Metal Gear Solid. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any fond memories of the game, whether it's from a gameplay perspective, whether from a story perspective, artistic perspective, it can be one, it can be all. If you have any thoughts or memories you would like to share, please let me know in the comments. And I hope you're having a great Sunday. And that's it. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.